what is going on? Today, it is Friday, October 4th, 2019. And we are at the somewhat midpoint of Hispanic Heritage Month. For those of you that didn't know. Weird thing about Hispanic Heritage Month is that it's September 15th through October 15th. Like, why couldn't you put it on a month? Like September or October? Like, why gotta be already halfway through September? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So, it's been a long, long week. And I'm ready to be done. Anyways, so last night was Thursday Night Football. For those of you that don't watch football and don't know, Seahawks versus the Rams. And it was an exciting, very, very captivating game. To give you the recap, a team scored more points than the other team. Game was in Seattle. It came down to the very last second, or just about the very last second. Seattle came through with the W. The Rams could have won, but Zerline missed that last field goal. So, what are you going to do? Probably make it next time, right? It was a good game. It was a really good game. So Wilson was on fire. Gurley got 2 touchdowns, but he only got 50 yards in 15 carries. So there's been a lot of backlash as to Gurley. Is he injured still? Is he back to 100%? He's definitely not running like he used to. So everybody's saying, oh, the Rams may cut him. I don't think that's going to happen, but crazy things have happened this year, right? Like, Miami Dolphins got a first-round pick from the Steelers for Minkah Fitzpatrick. That happened. So, Mason Rudolph won. Danny Dimes won 2 games in a row. The Cowboys are 3-1. So, I mean, anything could happen now, right? But Seattle Seahawks seem to be a potential Super Bowl contending team. So we will see how they do the rest of the year. Russell Wilson, my guy, was on fire. 4 touchdowns, 268 yards, 151.8 QB rating. This man was doing it all. He was accurate when he was passing. He was avoiding the pass rush. The Rams got 1 sack. One. I don't know about you, but the past 2 weeks, the Rams have not looked the way that they should be looking. The Rams defense does not look anywhere near to what they were last year. And I guess that means that Ndamukong Suh was a really big factor in how they were doing. Probably should get him back. This week was a long week. Got a new haircut, as you can see right here. And I was supposed to get it tomorrow, but tonight we have a gathering that me and my wife are going to go to. And I wanted to get it before I go to the gathering because, I somewhat care about my appearance. And it was getting a little long, getting a little cray-cray. I was able to slide into an appointment today, so that was good. And then it has been a crazy week. A lot of weird things happening at work. Like, it's an odd week. It's like full moon week. The whole week had a full moon, but during the day. I don't know if you can have a full moon during the day, but I mean, I guess you can because I can somewhat see the moon out there. So it's a weird week. But it was good, right? Like, I got through the week, right? I'm here at home. It's daylight out, so I didn't come home when it was nighttime. It's a great week. I had a few things in the yard that I had to take care of. So we have pine trees, and the one thing about pine trees that is very annoying is the pine needles. And we have a pool in the back, and the pool's got a leak, right? It had a major leak at the main drain in the bottom, and we got that sealed up. But we also have there's a leak somewhere else. We did the bucket test, and the water in the pool is going down faster than the water in the bucket. So we know there's a leak somewhere. We don't know where, so now we have to have somebody come back out, find that, which is, I mean, it's not losing as much water as it was before. It lost about 2 to 3 inches of water a day before. So thankfully, it's not that bad. I think it's like half an inch of water that we're losing faster than what is evaporated. So that's kind of good. But the worst thing about having pine trees is that the pine needles fall all into the pool, and it's fall, so that means that more pine needles are falling into the pool. Like, I feel like I've got haystacks upon haystacks. I probably should get like a goat and live here, and that goat can eat all the pine needles, all the dead pine needles for food. But we can have goat cheese, little goatlets. What are the baby goats called? I don't know, right? Goatlets, right? No, goatlets sound like something you would buy at the store. Anyways, so, but we got, it looks like hay mounds in my backyard right now because that's how many pine needles have fallen into the pool. And then we get pine needles all in the gutters, and I gotta get in a ladder, get those out. It's just a pain in the butt. These are the dilemmas. If you ever were thinking about buying a home, these are the dilemmas that you have when you're buying a home. No one ever tells you you gotta clean gutters every week during the fall time. No, I had to find out firsthand. And I have to be reminded every week because I don't want to do it. So, I'm a guy, right? I'll get to it, right? So, weird thing though, my grass hasn't grown as fast as it did in the summer. I think that's because there's not as much water going into the ground. Summertime, it would rain every day pretty much. Where I live, it rains a lot. I mean, every day it was raining. I live in like this weird bubble in South Florida where no matter what's going on weather-wise, like there seems to be rain that comes there every day. It's the weirdest thing. I think that may have something to do with why the grass was growing really fast. I had to cut the grass almost every week during the summer. But now, it's like I'm going about 3 or 4 weeks without cutting the grass, and it doesn't look bad. It's just I just don't have to cut it as much, which is great. I don't feel like cutting grass, right? So, anyways, back to the sports world, right? So this weekend we have a great event in Down Under, UFC 243 in Australia at Marvel Stadium, which is a great name for a stadium. That's what I think, right? UFC 243. We have a Kiwi versus an Aussie. We have Adesanya versus Whitaker. Two different styles. Adesanya is a former kickboxer, and he's accurate and lethal, right? And Whitaker is a man who just takes bombs and dishes it out. So it's going to be a really good fight. I don't know who's going to win. I mean, nobody knows who's going to win, right? But who I think is going to win, I think Adesanya will pull it out. Whitaker's been looking a little sluggish in his last few fights. And Adesanya had a really good fight against Gastelum. That was a fight that I think, had he not fought that one, then people may have doubted him, right? But he was able to slug it out, and he was able to take punishment and dish it out. And I think at the end of that fight, we were seeing what he was capable of doing in the later rounds. So, great fighters. I just think Adesanya is going to pull it out. I always think, for me, I think fighters that have great striking and great cardio are the fighters that tend to last the longest. Unless you're fighting Khabib, then you gotta have great cardio, great striking, great wrestling, great jiu-jitsu, great sambo. You gotta have it all against somebody like Khabib because he's gonna wear you down. So, but in that fight, Adesanya, Whitaker, I think Adesanya's gonna come out on top. I don't think he's gonna knock out Whitaker. I think it's gonna go to the 5 rounds. So, funny thing about predictions, right, on that one. Somebody in their press conference earlier this week asked them something along the lines of, what do you think the outcome's going to be? And Whitaker jokingly says, well, I want a 5-round slugfest and barely come out with a split decision. What do you expect? And that's why we have coaches like Popovich answering questions. I give you short answers that don't really give you what you want. So UFC 243 is looking very, very good as a card. And I think they did really good justice about having people that are from Australia or in that area, the Oceania area, also fighting on that card, giving some recognition to the fighters there. And I don't think there's a home field advantage over there for either fighter because you're going to have a lot of people from New Zealand, a lot of Kiwis come over there and watch the fight and be present, and then you're going to have a lot of Aussies there. So, and we're talking about a large stadium. Over 55,000 people in attendance. That's crazy for a UFC fight. It's going to be super loud. Can you imagine having a UFC fight with over 100,000 people? In the future, you have some like crazy super fight where you have these two top dogs fighting against each other that everybody loves, and they are so captivating, right? And you have them fighting in something like AT&T Stadium or whatever the stadium's called, at that point. For those of you that don't know, AT&T Stadium is where the Dallas Cowboys play, and I think they have a capacity of over 100,000, if I'm not mistaken. So, but imagine, like, I think that's what Dana White's hoping for. If they can do what they're expecting to do in Marvel Stadium, I think that's going to be a precedent for what they potentially could do in the future. And man, like, that's like Diaz versus McGregor versus Khabib, right? If everything lined up right, like that would be it, right? Like one of those fights, right? I don't know if Adesanya and Whitaker would have that draw here, but over there it does, because that's where they're from. That's where all of their love and their fanhood is. A lot of people who know them. I mean, not a lot, but that's where a bigger draw is going to be, and that's smart for them to be over there. So, but I think if you have a stadium like Wembley Stadium or AT&T Stadium where you can have over 100,000 people, like you would have to have this would have to be the gauge for if that's capable, if that's possible. So, but UFC, I think. We have seen such a difference in what they used to be versus what they are now. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. They're very successful in what they promote and what they market. So here's and to go into that, right? Like companies that are big like UFC and NFL and Major League Sports, right? One of the things that I notice about players and athletes is that sometimes they feel that they are bigger than what the company is, the organization. I work for a company, an organization of thousands of people, and I am in no way bigger than the company, right? Like, I have my place, right? I'm a valued employee, but at the same time, I don't supersede the company and the organization, right? The company and organization builds a culture, and that company establishes who they are, right? And everybody has to fall in line, essentially, within certain parameters, right? And you have players and athletes that try to go against that grain. They want to be bigger than the company, right? There are very few players in the history of sports that have been able to be at that level. These are players like Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Cristiano Ronaldo. Like, these players are the players and athletes that supersede that sport because they built a bigger brand than just as an athlete. So they carry a lot more weight into the conversation that they hold. But a lot of athletes don't understand that they don't have those cards that they think they have. So when they go into negotiations and conversations, they always try to push an envelope that they know they're not going to be able to open. And I mean, case in point, we have UFC fighters that are requesting a certain amount of money for a fight. And unfortunately, number one, they might not even be worth what they're asking for, or number two, their brand isn't that big yet, right? And so they have to finagle their way. All I'm saying is that at some point an athlete has to compromise, right? Like you fight for what you want, but at some point you may have to compromise. And so in our field, right, we're not a bunch of athletes, right? We are normal working people, right? You have to understand that when you work for a place and you work for a company or an organization that is a larger organization, you're not the boss, right? You're an employee, you're a frontline employee, or wherever you're at in that organization. You have to understand that you want to get something, you want to try to push for something, but understand that you may not be able to get that because it goes further than what the company is, right? It goes beyond the company. And so, unfortunately, at that point, you have to make a decision. Do you compromise, or do you continue to push that envelope with the risk that you may cut the company out completely, or the company may cut you out? So, look at Antonio Brown, right? I'm not saying that I'm not here to preach that he's wrong or right, but what he went after was bigger than the company, than the NFL team, and the league as a whole. So, unfortunately, when you do that, you go against the grain. You're going against a much larger person. Unfortunately, you more than likely are going to lose. That's just the reality, whether you're right or wrong. So, if you're willing to die on that hill, I mean, if that's the fight that you want, that's the fight that you want. I'm not talking about Antonio Brown as a person. I'm not talking about what he's struggling with or what he's dealing with, or I'm not saying he's struggling. I'm not. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about whatever fight that you're fighting. If it goes against the corporation and the company that you're working for, and you're continuing to push that envelope and push that conversation, at some point, one of two things are going to happen. You're going to compromise, or you're going to be pushed out. Unless you are a larger-than-life character, you more often than not, you're going to lose that battle. So you just have to weigh your options. In your work field, you have to make that decision. Are you willing to die on this hill, right? Not die, right? But are you willing to make that sacrifice to try and get what you want? And if you are, just be prepared, right? You can't complain. I mean, you can, right? You can complain if you want, but it's probably going to fall on deaf ears. So, yeah. So that's my little soapbox about kind of things that, like, negotiations and sports and things like that. We got football this weekend. We've got college football. Tua, Hurts, Herbert, Burrow. We got the Heisman candidates right now, and they all look really good, and they're all looking like top 10 quarterbacks. We're not talking about top, first round quarterbacks. If these players play at an elite level that they're capable of playing, this might be the first time in a long time that I see 4 quarterbacks go within the first 10 picks, let alone the first round. I think I don't even remember the last time that happened, but I think still the number 1 pick is definitely Tua, hands down. Everything about him, his mobility, his decision making, his processing speed, his deep threat and accuracy and velocity. I think he's the most ready, but not just the most ready, but he has such great skills. Like, there's quarterbacks that are NFL ready, but then there's really a ceiling for them. I think the ceiling for him is farther than where he's at right now. He reminds me of like a Russell Wilson type quarterback, and obviously last night you see why Russell Wilson is what he is, why he became one of the at one point the highest paid NFL player in history, because of just his skill set, his decision making, his motivation. I think Tua is definitely the number 1 pick for sure right now. It's got to be a lot to change anybody's mind on that, right? Mel Kiper Jr., right? Like, everybody loves Mel Kiper, and he put so Mel Kiper Jr. got a lot of flack recently for saying who's the top-rated draft prospect, and everybody said, "Oh, Tua, he said Jerry Jeudy was the top-rated NFL prospect. He's the best college player right now." Everyone's like, "You're an idiot. Tua's going number 1. Tua's going number 1." And I just had to sit there and watch and say, he's not talking about who's going to be the number 1 pick, right? Like, Jerry Jeudy is probably the most talented person in college football right now. Like, I mean, his size, his speed, his route running, everything about him says he's probably the best college player right now. But when it comes to draft, though, obviously wide receivers are probably not going to be drafted number 1 in this day and age, right? In the 90s, Keyshawn Johnson, yeah, that made sense, right? Quarterbacks weren't really as coveted as they are now. Franchises live and die on a quarterback. So, but that Kiper was just saying Jerry Jeudy was the best player, not who's going to be number 1. So anyways, college football's coming up this week. More conference plays coming up, so I think we have like 14 teams that are undefeated right now, but it's only like week 6, so we're gonna see once conference play is really ramping up, we're gonna start to see teams lose. Who do I think is gonna be the top 4 at the end of the year? Alabama, Clemson. Well, I think Clemson's going to go down to 4 though. If they remain undefeated, they cannot play like they did against UNC. I hope they've had some come to Jesus moments this past week, because they cannot play like they did against UNC. I mean, otherwise they're not going to be even in the top 4. But Alabama, Clemson, I think Clemson's going to bounce back. Let's be honest. I think they're going to bounce back. UNC is a tough opponent. I mean, they did beat Miami, and Miami's a premier team. So, but I think it's Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. If I had to give it to a 4th team, it would probably be Oklahoma. So I think it's going to be those 4 teams at the end of the year. They all have a chance to win their conference and be undefeated outright. It's going to be hard for Georgia and LSU to be in that top 4 ranking unless it's one of those close games against Alabama where they lose. It's like 17-14. They lost by a field goal at the end of the game type deal, and they dominated every other game. If Clemson, goes out and plays games like they did against UNC, there's no way that they're going to be in the top 4 at the end of the year if LSU or Georgia ends up playing dominant football except against Alabama. Well, there you have it. It's the end of the week. Friday is upon us. I'm going to enjoy my weekend with yard work to do. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend. We're able to start this up next week again. See you guys next time.